moderator should, because I can't shut up, and I've always got something to say. The last thing I would say is that these are really boring if you don't get involved. So please ask questions, and make sure they're questions. Don't put your hand up and say, oh, it's not really a question, but I just want to tell you about this thing I'm doing. That's really interesting, but not for everybody else. So please ask questions. I'm not being mean either, because it is interesting, and one of these two might be actually really interested to know what it is, and someone else in the room might be. So this is a good thing. You should talk about what you do, but that's after. But ask questions during. So why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about yourself. This is like a game show.
So hi, my name is Julie Lefkowitz. I work at Opening Ceremony, heading up digital marketing and CRM and all sort of marketing technology behind both of those two programs. I'm really excited to be here. I actually met Gemma and the founder at an event almost a year ago, and really glad I struck up that conversation. I think what they're doing is so cool. And actually, before Opening Ceremony, I was at Urban Outfitters working on corporate strategy and business development. So a lot of their turnkey solution is where we would see sort of target companies that we're looking to add in the portfolio. That was often their biggest price point, when you're under a $20 million business, like getting the scale for your production and making those gross margins that at the end of the day can grow the business. So that's why their concept really stood out to me. But really excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Nika Diwa. I started in wholesale actually, and that's what really spurred my passion for buying. And so I came here to study specifically buying and merchandising from LIM College actually. And after that, I moved out to work with Zania and Barney's. Loved working and buying for menswear. Up to now, I think menswear is still my favorite to buy for. Women's shoes after that, and then moved on to The Real Real, which is a luxury consignment website. It's fairly new, launched in 2011, and started the merchandising department from scratch there. And yeah, and after that, I actually left corporate fashion as of a month ago, so this is very new for me to start my own projects. I have a blog on the side, but started recently a nonprofit with one of my colleagues at Barney's New York, and so I'm really excited about that. And I think it's really funny how I met Gemma, because we both met because we got locked out of the same fashion show for being late, and so I think that's so fun because it's just a testament to how things happen for a reason.
Don't lock people out of your bed.
Don't do that also. Because people have covered that show. Oh well, they're lost. Our game. So nice to be here, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is talk about Fashion Week. So Paris is going on right now. We see certain things. I find with the coverage I read about Paris Fashion Week, it's less and less about the actual clothes. No one really seems that bothered about clothes as much as they ever used to. So, but we want to talk about reality here. We want to talk about how does it actually affect the people in this room. So why don't you two tell us about your interaction with Fashion Week in New York, what you went to see, what you didn't bother looking at, what you remember, what you didn't pay any attention to, what you think matters.
Sure. So honestly, I agree, Simon. I don't think that the shows have as much of an impact as they used to. Even when I was at Barney's, actually, they kept passing the tickets to the shows to the interns because they just didn't have time to do it, and it became flooded. It really has become a blogger's world. If you just look, it's really the street fashion, which, don't get me wrong, is very important. So actually, I think in that way, even if you don't have a ticket to the show, I've noticed and made some really incredible connections and have heard some really great stories about emerging designers who have made their name just standing outside of the venue, because there are so many photographers, buyers, who are just having to pass by. And I think it's really turned into a platform for emerging designers, fresh talent, to really put their name out there and really build their name. That's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, so I think about it a little bit more from just the overarching business strategy perspective. So we did our show towards the beginning of New York Fashion Week, and I think the way that we're trying to make the fashion show be more relevant, at least to drive sales, is to offer a pre-order, so that you can order the line you just saw and receive it about 6 weeks. It's something that Tom Ford and Burberry sort of kicked off last February when they had the buy now, wear now with their collections. So I think that more designers are taking that approach.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I think just like everything has become so real time across the board, and I think the street style is a little bit of a reflection of that. Like it's like I want to put the clothes on that I just saw that cool girl wearing on the street. So I think from a business perspective, it really has shifted quite a bit. And I definitely it's an interesting insight to share that like there's a lot of great people to meet at the show. I know our after party, people are just showing up and coming in. But you just got to be in the room. One other piece of advice, sort of on the tangent of just getting your name out there. I had a vendor email me a few weeks ago, a marketing vendor, and the email came from a girl who's an intern. And I was just really, I remember being an intern, I remember being new. And I just said, you know what, I don't want the product, but like, I think it's cool that you're getting into marketing, why don't we go grab a coffee? And we did, and it was just letting her know if she needed anything she could, we could keep talking. So I've even had people like reach out to me on LinkedIn because they've seen my profile and they're like, hey, I'm new, I just want to chat, I want to learn. And I've used that approach in the past, and I think it's really effective, especially when you're just starting out, because at the end of the day, people feel good about helping. So I think it's much as we can take advantage.
So that's really interesting because it used to be, even 5 years ago, Fashion Week was one thing, and that was an opportunity for long lead time magazines and stores that were buying that needed to place orders well in advance to place those orders so that the designers had 3 to 4 months to manufacture and deliver the goods. And some brands, many brands still do that. You know, Paris and Milan both claim that's what they do. But the reality is, it's not. It's a marketing exercise, and now as soon as you allow celebrity in the front row, it's all over. You're not doing this for the journalists. And what's exciting, and particularly for the young designers in the room, is that that's okay. You don't have to be bound by the constricts of, World Trade Center magazine groups coming in and saying, we're gonna feature this in our September issue, which is 4 months away. Right? That's almost no longer relevant, which is great. Like the phone that's taking a picture of us right now is just as important as being featured in the September issue. I mentioned at your conference, we had a conversation which is about what's worth more, an Instagram post or a double page spread of the September issue. And when I was at Parsons, I remember so many designers, all they dreamed of was being in Vogue. That was it. There was nothing else in their life, just that at a runway show. It was like, that's the end of their life was that. And I get it, but it meant a whole lot different 5 years ago than what it does now. Now, if Margaret Jane wears your clothes, you probably will sell more than if you're on page 182 of the September issue. So, marketing. If you're not going to, if Fashion Week is something very different, how then should a young designer hope to reach potential buyers, whether it's Barney's or opening ceremony or whoever else, if you can't sort of say, well, I'm going to do a fashion show in a space like this during Fashion Week and hope to get the buyer there. What kind of approaches, and listen, there's no one answer to this, you should know that right now, but what kind of approaches could work?
So I think one of the things that I saw opening ceremony do, and it wasn't for a designer, but it goes back to the Instagram comment. One of our founders is always on Instagram, finding out who's doing what. And there was a kid, Alex, I don't even remember his full name, and he had, I don't know, maybe 10,000 followers, like not a lot of followers. And somehow he got surfaced on our founder, Humberto's feed. And he just loved it. He just loved the style. It was really authentic. I think the kid was 15. And just that point of view really resonated. And I think that idea that it's become super democratic is true. So the way in which, I think a lot of time people spend tremendous effort on their portfolio, they should, it has to be equally represented on digital. Because from a hiring standpoint, you know who I want on my team? I want a 23-year-old who knows how all that stuff works. I'm 29, and I'm not even that much older than the people who I'm trying to hire. But they're just in and out of it every day. They know what's cool, and they keep a good pulse on it. So I would just recommend that whatever your digital footprint is, just treat it like it's your portfolio, because people are watching and people will find out. And I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
I get a cold email from, really, no matter how exciting the subject line or how amazing the lookbook, 9 times out of 10, I'm not opening it. And that's just the reality. That's not for everybody, but I know for me and most of the people that I work with, it's just, you're so swamped and inundated with so many emails that it's just not something that we really prioritize. And I'm going to be honest, we get it multiple times every day. So for me, what has worked in the past, and I would really recommend, is really, I think you mentioned, or just be in the room. With the use of the internet now, you have the entire Fashion Week schedule at your fingertips. And you would be so surprised how many people will let you into an event if you just ask. A press media kit does not hurt. Definitely have that. Just shoot off an email because they will open it and they will say yes, because they know that even if you're not an established designer, you may have a following that could really blast their event and they will want you there. So you get in there, and even I remember there was a young designer. She was so young, I think under 25, and showed up to a Manolo Blahnik presentation just because she had heard about it and just walked in wearing her designs. And I had happened to be there with my senior buyer and kicked off a conversation that lasted, turned into a meeting. Wear your design. If you're going to go to the event, have a kick-ass business card that really represents your image in a card. You want to get their attention. You have a second. If you can really get their attention across the room with your you style it up, you are a walking marketing campaign. So that's really the best way, honestly. Just be in the room.
Yeah, another way to perhaps enhance that is that you are your own story. So everything you're doing right now is part of your story. The way you're sitting, what you're doing with your phone, the way you did your hair today, what you're wearing, the way you speak, your business card, everything is your story, and every one of us is judging you right now for every bit of it. You're judging me, you're judging my friends here, you're judging everybody else in the room. It's just a reality. Your element is part of your story. So there's no point in saying to someone, oh, we just launched, we've got this. Come and see me in 5 years when you've done something, when you've been around. You can't suddenly be a designer today. You must have been a designer. So I remember in my previous role, I talked to a student once and I said, have you ever interned? And they're like, I've been interning since I was 12. And then mum let them go to the corner shop that happened to be a fashion store and intern there. Not really, but kind of. And so it was just in them. You have to, it's not even like you're convinced someone. You've got to be in a position you couldn't possibly do anything else. You couldn't possibly, what on earth are you doing not wearing your own design? Do you hate it? Is that what you're saying? I don't even understand it. I've gone so far beyond even that conversation about it. So it's about absolute 100% integrity and belief in what you're doing, because then you'll convince somebody. When you're in a conversation, the email thing is really good. Of course you didn't know all these emails. That's like so 2008. So, but if the email is like today, if you say, oh, I was in your store, and I was in Barney's today and I saw this, and that's the subject line, they'll probably open it. They're like, fuck, what was it like? Not a good thing. So then, if you make it relevant to what they do, and then they might be like, all right, well, you've got my attention. You were in my store, you've spoken to me as a human being, this is not generic. And then maybe if you are true and you've got a genuine story, they'll read it. So, emails never work except for when they do. It's like talking to a buyer at an inappropriate place never ever works, often when it does. So there isn't a rule, but if you're not telling them, just like luck, people get really pissed off with people who are really lucky, right? I do as well. But luck is really good as long as you do something about it. Put yourself in the way of it. And if you're wearing the whole kit and it's you and you've got a real story and you've got a nice business card and a good elevator pitch and then luck happens to strike you, you're ready. It's okay. This is not about me, this is about you. So on the subject of buying, so what do you expect? So let's talk about the specifics, right? So the stuff you can take, tangible benefits. If you meet a designer now, they look great, and you think, well, this is interesting. What should they know right now?
I have to piggyback off something you said, because yes, know your story. If a a designer is not confident, and I know confidence, wow, like I'm not confident 9 times out of 10. You know, I'm just standing in front of the mirror and doing some of that daily affirmation stuff. It's hard. But truly, if you're talking to me and you are not confident, I'm not buying it. Both ways. I'm just not. Because, like you said, if you are not just exuding, fashion is a message to the world. It's really special. It's an art that you live and you breathe and have your being in it. That's really special. You created something that is a reflection of your soul. You know, it's serious, it's deep, right? And so if you're not confident about that, then to me, I'm thinking, this is not gonna sell. She hates her stuff. That's what I'm thinking. And if you don't believe in it, there's no way. So, you know, if I would really go to the restroom, compose yourself, get it together, and then have the conversation. But you have to be confident. You have to love what you have created. You have to love what you're creating. So that's the first thing. Secondly, first contact, definitely, like we mentioned, business card is crucial. If you can be wearing your designs, I mean, you should be wearing your designs. Lastly, if you have a lookbook, and I'm not talking like 25 pages, please, like that's one of my pet peeves. We don't, 6 to 12 looks that are not freshly printed from Staples, because you can tell, you know, quality. People, please, that's another pet peeve too. It has to be high def. I mean, you work with a professional photographer, you invested in this lookbook. Short, sweet, succinct, to the point, very high quality, style it up, not a lot of words. You know, don't bring a line sheet because we're not doing that at an event, you know? But in this day and age, you know, read the room, right? Read the world. It's Instagram, it's Snapchat, and that's how the buying industry has had to operate. So make it quick, make it fast, make it short, 6 to 12, that's it. So just to recap, you know, confidence, come dressed to impress in you know, whatever garment that you created. Business card, short lookbook. That's it.
So I actually have a question for you because I think that you're in a position to talk to us a little better than I am. Do you, like, so we're talking about inbounds to you. How do you guys at Barney's, or when you're at Barney's or when you're at the coast, like, how are you guys, like, scanning the market to find those emerging designers? Because I know OC has its way, but I'm very passionate.
Yeah. Well, you know Tomoko. So we have a fashion director at Barney. So department stores, it's very different. The thing is, it's really, really different. Barney's takes emerging designers so seriously to the point where we actually don't, we like it. If you've never been featured in Saks or Neiman, we like that. If you haven't never been in a boutique, we like that. Now, that does not make it easy. It's still extremely difficult, but because we take it so seriously, it has to filter through our fashion director. So, you know, and our fashion director is you know, at a lot of events. Is at a lot of events, but it's not, you know, it's, of course, you know, it is a small company. So if you make that big of an impression with a buyer, she would then go to the fashion director who would then, you know, but I will say full disclosure, we rarely, I mean, I've never actually brought, I have to be honest, I've never brought an emerging designer to the attention of Tomoko. But we're always, you know, that's how we scan it. But the fashion director is the one who makes the final cut. She is open to suggestions, but you know, you have to be serious, and you know, we have to be able to back it up if we bring something to her.
So, does anyone know the story about Kenneth Cole Productions? I'm sure some of you do. So Kenneth Cole Productions is called Productions because he couldn't, the legend has it, he couldn't get a slot in Fashion Week or he couldn't afford it, and you're not allowed to do a runway show on the street, the city won't let you. So he rented a space on the road outside Bryant Park on the street, and he said to the mayor's office, we're doing a film production, so you know, we need space there. And the mayor's office went, all right, that sounds fine, Kenneth Cole Productions, you know, I believe that. And he just had models going up and down, so when buyers came out, they're like, oh, that's nice, you know, whatever they thought. But anyway, that was his way of doing it. And there are many other ways of doing it. I'm interested in, there's one other point I want to make, but I'm interested in what have you seen that has surprised you and intrigued you? So it can be legends you've heard about. I wasn't at the Kenneth Cole production thing, but some far too young. But I've heard about it. And one other small thing is that when you said confidence, Nika, I agree with that. Except some people aren't very confident. But I reckon you can always spot when there's a twinkle in someone's eye. You can spot belief in what you're doing. You may not be. Some people are really tongue-tied, especially like this. Anna Wintour walked in here. Most of us probably would think twice about what we're going to say. Fair play. But someone like that will recognise belief in what you're doing. And sometimes you're like wearing an outfit and you put an outfit and you think, well, this is in the collection, but it's not my favourite. Wear your favourite. It's really easy. Find the thing that you do love about what you're doing. Talk about that. Because people will recognise the enthusiasm. They will. I'm living proof of enthusiasm trumpeting any kind of knowledge or ability, believe me. So what have you seen that has impressed you? While you're answering, I'm going to try and think of mine because I can't think of it. Come on, Judy. You've seen some online, like something you've read and thought.
Yeah.
We also saw that.
I love these stories because they're always like,
Yeah. See, this is actually telling because we can't think of an obvious one, which means it's right for you lot to come up with a good one.
Something that has intrigued me. Okay, just generally. Okay. Honestly, it's pretty simple, but I'm always very impressed when someone will just come up to me, especially if they know, for instance, that I'm affiliated with, when I was at Barney, and they just ask boldly, these are my designs, this is what I have to bring to the table. I'd love to collaborate. That always intrigues me because you'd be surprised how rare that is. Secondly, when they come up to me and they've done their research, I'm very intrigued. When they know my target market, other than, oh, you love emerging designers. No, like when they've done it's all out there, it's on Google. When they've done the research, can give me, competitors that are similar to theirs, and in a natural fashion, not awkward, but just natural, and give me points of differentiation that show that they've really done their research. That's very impressive to me. It always makes me curious to hear more.
So, sort of drafting on that, it's actually something I did. I was at a conference and I saw the founder of Reformation speak, and they have a great business. I just really respect what they do. And I actually went up to the founder after she was off the panel. I ran right to the front of the line. I was like, I got to meet this girl. I've been learning about her business for like the past 5 years. And I think in that moment, there's a few things you can say that kind of will stick with the person. And with her in particular, I also happen to love interior design, and I've been refurbishing my apartment. And I had used some of her images from her apartments as inspiration. So first thing is, this is my name. Second thing is, this is who we have in common, which was my mentor and her have worked together. So this is who we know together. By the way, I love, the purple Innova in your apartment. And at first I think she was, used to that, the first 2 bullet points. And on that third, her eyes kind of lit up, and she's like, oh, well, what apartment were you talking about? And I was like, oh my God, this business is quite successful. But I think it's that, don't discount what it means to connect to somebody on just a random point of commonality. That's something that sticks with people's memories. It's a hook. And I agree, you've got to know your stuff, and you have to be able to speak sort of in a way where you're providing insight on the business that maybe somebody didn't think about it that way before, but it's really, I think, those personal details that stick with it. I know it's really sticks with me. So, it's sort of, yeah.
So, one thing I find really perplexing is when people ask me for something, strangers, because I think, why am I going to give you that? I don't know who you are. You just asked me to do something. I'm really busy. I've got a family, and I've got friends, and I've got work and everything. You just asked me to do something. I don't know who you are. So, as much as no one really admits that, that's what everyone thinks all the time. So when someone says to you, oh, can you just go to my website and have a look at it and tell me what you think? The answer is, of course I'm fucking not. I'm totally not going to do that. And if someone emails me and says, click on this link and then tell me what you think, I'd love to hear your feedback. Pay me. So, and I'm being obnoxious, but the fact is, that's what everyone, because I am, but the fact is, that's what everyone thinks. So the trick, and this is a trick, right, and everything I know is based on popular culture, This is what, you know that film, Love Actually, when Tommy Lee Jones is the American president and he's going to meet Hugh Grant, the British Prime Minister, and he says to him, I'll give you anything you want, as long as I want to give it to you. The point is, I'll say yes to anything as long as it's something I want to say yes to. And the same is true of a buyer. The same is true of anyone in this room. All you've got to do is figure out what does that person want to say yes to, and then ask them for that. It's easy, right? And it sounds obvious, but the fact is there's a lot of things that are obviously that they're not going to do. And so you've got to try and think, don't ask people for things, don't. Give them an opportunity to say yes to something they want to say yes to, which is a whole different way of looking at it, completely different. 9 times out of 10 when people ask me for things, they're asking me for something. That one time when someone's offering to let me do something that I like to do, you know, it might be to help someone, or it might be to connect someone to someone that I like. You know, I love 19th Amendment, they're good friends of mine, I love what they do. If I find a young designer that hasn't heard of them, I love the idea of connecting them. That's a good thing. That's me. I'm getting something out of the equation here. I'm not doing anyone a favour, I'm getting something, because it makes me feel good. That's like such a critical difference in what people often think. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, one of the things that I learned a few years ago is about creating value, not seeking profit. And this sounds really hippie and it sounds like nonsense, but actually it's 100% true, I guarantee it. Because if you sit around a table with a bunch of people and all you're thinking of is, how can I get what I want out of this? How can I get profit? And then you do, and you walk away and the other 4 people are like, well, they did it all right. Guess what? No one likes you. They're not going to do it again. You're not coming back. Someone else is going to be sitting there next time. So, on the other hand, if you arrive and say, how come, like right now, us 3 sitting here, how can we help you? How can we create profit in terms of the ideas? How can we do that? Because then everyone gets a warm feeling. And they think, well, this is good, I like this person. I don't know why, but I like this person. Because you've not been focused on what you want, you've been focused on what they want. So as a buyer, you might come and say, I don't want anything, truly don't want anything. But I just want to tell you about my experience when I walked onto that floor, because it was X, Y, and Z, and I loved it, and blah, blah, blah. And then you might go, that's really interesting, thanks for that. Like, they're ballsy enough to come up to you, and they told you something you didn't know. Because they're always interested in their own business. So then that might start a conversation. You might then say, which of course will, oh, what do you do? And you get to tell them, and they're already in a good mood. You know, it's like, there's this book I read when I was a kid called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I see a couple of nods in the audience. It's brilliant. It's like 17 years old. I urge you to go and buy it and read it right away. Because it's the most silly, straightforward, make friends. But it's as true in business today as it ever was. Sorry, and that's not about me. I've got some really good questions as well, but I can't remember. So, this is a good one actually. This might be our last one until you lot come up with some questions. Influence and marketing. Let's talk about that for a minute. Because it just came up this week in the news where there's those dear ladies of Vogue not being very nice about it. And did you see Alexander Shaw posted, by the way, this was American Vogue, not British Vogue. Nothing like standing with your mates, is there? But anyways, they were castigating people that do influencer marketing when they do it themselves, which is sort of odd. What do you think about influencer marketing in general? Give us your thoughts maybe around that issue and about the street style thing, because everyone's got their own theories about it, you can't ignore it. So Julie, what do you think about that?
So, I think overall, if this was 3 or 4 years ago, I would say influencer marketing is a really interesting lever to pull. And I think the main sensitivity is make sure that you're activating somebody who's on brand. And fast forward to where we are today. I read an article 6 or 7 months ago about a girl who's 22 and making $150,000 a year writing blog posts. And not to diminish it, but it's because she was getting so much sponsorship money, she could, afford a beautiful apartment in New York, straight out of school, and she was working in finance. And I think that what has happened is we, at least at opening ceremony, we have an extraordinarily savvy customer who knows when they're being talked to authentically and who knows when it's a product placement. So I think the key thing with influencer marketing now, beyond just being on brand, is it has to be done in a very authentic way. And when I was at Urban Outfitters, I remember there's a blogger, Fashion Toast, and the Free People brand or Urban Portfolio was obsessed with fashion posts for like 2 or 3 years. And then she sort of just started selling out and very obviously promoting products that were giving her money to do so. I've seen the same thing with, what is it called, Who What Wear. It's just super transparent. And I remember the president of Free People, Meg, she said, she was just like, we love the girl, we love working with her, and now we won't touch her because our customers know. So I think in the same way, there's a lot of hunger around emerging designers and having the new creative in the room who hasn't been discovered yet. It's very much like who's that next influencer. That it sort of just becomes this accelerated cycle of like find a new person who's speaking to an audience before they sell out, so to speak.
Completely agree with that. It's really annoying when you know.
Yeah,
If they're just being puppets, you can really tell. I'm going to kind of speak to the designers with a smaller following, 10,000 lower, because I think this is important to note. You're at an advantage in that at that level, it's easier to be more authentic, and it's just the name of the game is just have more money, more problems, and more followers, more problems. That's just how it is, generally, not always. And I would really, definitely taking into consideration everything that has been said, but leverage that, and like, it's amazing. There's this influencer who has this 500K, and she charges $3,000 for just a shout out. And that's crazy, but if you are at that 10,000 and under, when you are looking, and there are so many, especially in New York City, so many brilliant stylists who are just everyday people, men and women and can really have beautiful Instagram feeds that really tell a great story, who would love to work with designers like you. And so if you have, let's say, like 9,000 followers, reach out to influencers around that bracket, and you can trade so that you don't have to spend money. Because you want to lower your overhead, right, as much as possible. So what you do is in your press kit, in your intro, when you reach out to them, this is what, and it's unspoken. If you have a similar following, you don't even necessarily have to say it, but just say, this is what I'll give you. I'll blast you on these social media sites. Press kit tells the story of how much unique visitors you've had, et cetera, in exchange for you to market my brand. So that's really nice because you then don't have to pay any money and you have someone marketing for free. So that's what I would say is something you should leverage if you're at that bracket. Also though, please protect your brand because it's so obvious. Don't just, that's the thing, especially being in New York City, there are so many talented young influencers as far as followers around that you can be picky. You can be extremely picky, and you should be. And another thing too, you don't have to spend to ship the product to them. You're in New York City. It's easy to find people who are in around your area. Meet up. You don't have to spend. Just decrease your costs as much as possible. You're in a day and age where you can really leverage free marketing that way. So you should do it, and you can afford to be picky.
So I just agree with me, like one tactical way to figure out a good influencer for your brand is I would go to LinkedIn, find your 10 favorite retailers or brands, figure out who's doing their social media, see if you can find them on Instagram, see who they follow, because the people they follow, it's a very tight list, and usually within it, it's, I think that there's always like, they're the ones who are going to know who's the next big influencer. The alternative would be just to reach out to that social media person on email. Email addresses generally follow the same structure, like first initial, last name at the company. I've certainly found people that way. And just ask them, because at least what I've experienced, people on social media love to talk about who they know, who's the next close thing. So just ask them, because they want to share it. That might be a good way to find who you can represent your brand well.
Thanks. We're going to come to questions now. I just want to add one little thing to that, which I think is really critical to be thinking of your question. Again, I guess so much of what I learned at Parsons, but I remember very early on, someone said to me, you've got to come and see this. I went down to a classroom, and there were 3 guys there, and even 3 guys together is unusual in fashion school, because it's predominantly women. And these 3 guys were doing a menswear design project, and the project was to design 20 looks on a piece of paper, and that was it. So they'd done that, But they'd also made half of the looks in garments, which wasn't required at all. And they shot them all on models. And they made back neck labels. And they made hang tags. And they made a lookbook. And they photoshopped an ad into a Times Square billboard to show what it looked like. And they filmed a TV commercial. And I looked at them, and I said, why did you do this? And they sort of looked at me like I was an idiot. I went, why wouldn't we? Because they've got a phone, so they can do the whole thing on their phone anyway. They've got friends, and this is the key. They've got friends, not because they're like socially connected in the old term of socially, but because they go to a school of design. And we've got 10 of those in the city, so you can find friends. And they figured out who would get something. The model wanted a TV commercial. You know, everyone wanted their thing out. It goes back to what I said before. Everyone wanted their thing out. So they just got everyone together and made these great things happen. And every single person associated with the project put it in their portfolio. So everybody won. Everybody. Which was amazing. So, questions. There was one other thing. What was I going to say? I told you about it before, Judy. You said you'd remember it. Wow. Be a very good liar. Yes.
Hi, my name is Christina Wallace. I'm a designer, and I want to know how do you front the idea that quote unquote nowadays, like Barney's and other like opening ceremonies, aren't wanting to buy like a designer in their first or second season. So this is what's been, I actually have met with Barney, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, when I had a line a long time ago, that wasn't the case back in the early days. It was actually great that it was your first season. But I know that there's a lot of young designers that have gotten in the game like burn stores by not shipping. So how do you, can you just speak to that whole idea, if it's really true and solid, that you really like feel like you really need to be the designer and survive to be, you know, for a season.
So I'm just going to, for those of that didn't hear, I'm going to paraphrase the question. What can a designer that hasn't shown very much before do to convince you, as Barney's or as opening ceremony, that you should be paying attention to them in their very early seasons? So knowing it used to be really easy, now it's not. What kind of things would you look for from them? If they said to you, I've never sold with you before, you would say, would you have X, Y, and Z, and therefore I'd be interested.
So I'll just give it a little bit more from an operations perspective and a marketing perspective, because eventually all that stuff kind of rolls downhill in terms of production delays, production differences, shipping delays. So I think something that can, well, one, you have to confirm, is that why they're not carrying the product? Because if they're not carrying the product because it doesn't fit the assortment, that's a whole other issue. So to maybe get ahead in front of the concern about the fact that you're new and you might not have a track record when it comes to production and delivery, just say it up front. Like, I know that this is usually a risk with the designer. You either have a track record or if you don't, just say the facts. Like, this is my shipping window. It's incredibly important. Here's where I think it could break down. I can offer to communicate with you very frequently to let you know if there is an issue. So instead of the marketing team, for instance, supposed to launch a product, you know, in a week, and we find out it's 4 weeks out, you know, right before we're about to put it online, we have advance notice and we can react. So I think as much as you can get in front of it and say, I know this is an issue, here's how I'm going to handle it, and I'm going to be on top of this. That is not a conversation that designers have with us. You know, they don't volunteer it. And the virtual designers are particularly not always the easiest to work with in that way. So.
For a big department store like Barney's New York, it is, yes, it's a lot tougher just because we are accountable to our budget, and we really need to know that a certain sales volume will be met. So I do see that, being an answer. However, I would really find out, in a very, polite way. It has to be professional. It is a business meeting. What their hesitations are, and be ready and come prepared with answers to negotiate as to everything. Again, they want to know always what is in it for me. How will this make me look good to my boss? How many gold stars will I get from this? So be prepared to really negotiate on behalf of your brand as to why they don't want to miss out on this. And even if it is not at that time, already, okay, you know, can I come back? I can come back at this next time. This is really exciting. This is something that I have. Give him a hook. You know, I can give you this. You know, maybe hold off a little bit on a certain, you know, negotiation, whether it's, you know, shipping terms or any kind of discount. I can come back here. We can talk about this. And then on another note, press. In the meantime, if you are a new designer, if you have a track record of people who are a lot bigger than you as far as influence, following, if you have a, you know, and you really have to do up your press kit, that's really important. Then the chances of the answer being yes absolutely goes up, because it does happen. It's rare, but it does happen, but rarely without people who are a lot bigger in influence than you saying that this is the next new thing. So that's crucial to always be building on that.
Yeah, it's very much, as we said earlier on, about giving them the opportunity to say yes. So think of all their problems, solve all their problems, and then tell them, if they love the product, they want to say yes, but you have to make them able to do that. So you have to take away their worry about this, and this. And just, as you said, Julie, just acknowledging that you're aware of what their worries could be is a huge step in that direction. And good product is never enough on its own. It's just not. You know, Julie famously bought Proenza Scholar's collection off the runway and gave them half the money. You know, that was pre-2008. It's very unlikely that's going to happen again. Another question? Yes.
So, today especially, like, how much do buyers want to hear, like, this celebrity was wearing my garments, this social influencer, this blogger, rather than, like, my customers love this society in New York, they love my garments. Like, do they want to hear the celebrity sort of endorsement rather than who would actually use garments and buy it?
Of course, but be careful, because it could kill you. That's the thing, you have to be very careful, because especially, again, knowing your brand and being picky, because someone may pick up your designs that are very famous, but it could be very contrary to what the message, the brand message you're trying to portray. And again, you know, it comes down to the research too that for sure you've done about the, you know, boutique or department store that you are, you know, approaching. So if it matches, if it's in line with the brand message, absolutely. If not, no, just omit it, don't say anything about it. But both, we want to know both.
So one thing I'll add, just Urban Outfitters was an insanely customer-centric organization. Like, every decision passed through the lens of, is it an urban customer, anthropological customer, free from the customer? You know, 18 to 28, creative, went to college, blah, blah, blah. And all the buyers think on that level as well. And so I think as much as you can clearly articulate why your brand connects to their target customer, you just make, there's no more barrier there. And I think one of the easiest ways to find out how a brand thinks about a customer versus you trying to guess, it's on their website, usually in the profile page about our company. And it's, if they're a public company, it's in their security filings, and the 10Ks they're filing each year. It's always a little bit of a blurb in a paragraph. And then you're talking the same language, and it's a good way to connect with people because then you get it.
Language is really critical, actually. I'm glad you said that. There's so much what we talked about tonight is about homework. Like, don't go and tell the buyer from Barney's that a certain celebrity is wearing it if you know that the buyer from Barney's would hate the idea that celebrity is wearing it. And it happens. I was at one point talking to a very famous French company that makes luggage, and I happened to know that their #1 biggest customer in the world was a reality show star in the US, and they hated the fact that person was their biggest customer, and they would never mention it. And I remember sort of winking at the CEO saying, I know who it is. He's like, I know what you mean. I'm like, we both know that, we both know who this is. And so that was not something they wanted. The thing I might add is that you probably never take the same presentation to 2 meetings. You take whatever's appropriate for Barney's to Barney's, and you take whatever's appropriate for opening ceremony to opening ceremony. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with either of them. It doesn't mean you can't sell to both of them. But it just means that they are definitely focused on slightly different customers and know that in advance. Like, you give a fantastic opportunity for someone to go home a little bit early that day. If you give them the wrong bit of information, they'll say, you know what, it's not going to work for us. And and then they can go home early and they feel great, because they don't need you. But if they want you and you give them the right information, then they don't mind staying the extra half hour, because then they look good to their boss. Final question.
I've got a question.
Oh, yes. You work here.
Yes.
Yes, 19th is our favourite website.
So I've got a question kind of more for Julie. So we kind of had this conversation earlier about like young brands often have trouble because, you know, fashion's a really crowded space. You don't have like much SEO to deal with. So like given that all these brands have very limited budgets, where and digital marketing is such a big piece of what you do now, what would you suggest that they do? It could be online or offline, just the best way to spend their time.
Sure. So I think the internet is amazing in how well you can target somebody, having never met them face to face. I think, especially since Instagram opened up its platform to ads, one of the easiest, least expensive things you can do, go spend $500 on an Instagram ad, run it for a week, but be super, just be super strategic about who you target, because you can say, I want to target 18 to 28, like that age range on Instagram. I want them to also be following these brands. I want them to live in these countries. But whatever your target customer is, you can dial it down so specifically so that $500, when you put the $500 on Instagram, that ad gets into the right person's feed. And I think it's certainly more of an awareness platform than a conversion platform, meaning people click through and buy. But it's one of those things that not only are you potentially reaching an online customer, you're potentially getting in front of me or her or him, because we're also following those brands. We're trying to, see the latest and greatest. So that's definitely what I advise. You can do it on Facebook too, but I think Instagram's a lot more powerful in terms of people you want to be in front of, and it's better for brand.
Okay. So any last little message you want to leave people with? I mean, there's been an awful lot we talked about tonight. I think there's been some excellent messages. So I could characterize them, but I'd much rather hear it. Anything that's stuck out immediately?
I think never underestimate the reach that fashion can have globally. Because, Coco Chanel said, and this is so cheesy, but I love this. I love this quote. Fashion does not only exist in dresses, it exists in the sky, in the streets. It has to do with what is happening. And there's so much happening around you. It's a bit available to you at the click of, just at your fingertips, but you are in the most brilliant city, in my opinion, in the world. And you have so much that has inspired you, obviously, and that's why you're here. And again, confidence, I get tongue-tied constantly. I mean, I'm super nervous right now talking to you. And that's okay, but I think it's deeper than that. And I think it can start by just understanding that what you have to offer is so valuable, and to give yourself that space to explore what that means for you. And that it would, I really believe that, if you did that, it would just really, great things would happen, great things would come because of that.
I think I go back to this idea of being in the room, and I think a little bit more so, it's better to go through the back door to get where you're going, I've learned, than the front door, because everybody's the front door. And it's super crowded, and it's just not as interesting as an entry, and you're usually meeting the people at the front door who are used to saying no. So I think about even myself and some of my friends who have the coolest jobs right now. It was all just like, who do you know? Let me meet them. Let's go to coffee. Let's figure out what we want to do here. It was never, I didn't fill out an application and apply to a job. So I would say just be creative. There is a path. Just be hungry and figure it out.
I guess the only thing that strikes me, which probably is much as what like my friends have already said, which is know what your story is and be prepared to deliver it. Because everything's about communication. As I said, what you're wearing and how you sit and how you speak and what you do. It's all about communication. Fashion is communication. So know what you're trying to say, because if you don't, we'll just make it up for you. At the end of that, I want to say thank you to Nineteenth Amendment for having us, and Lisa as well for hosting us. I'm a little bit disappointed, because it's fantastic talking to people sitting on the beds. We're not on one. So we're not on the bed. That would be a whole lot more interesting. So perhaps the next one we'll do that. But anyway, would you join me in thanking these two incredible women?